I guess I'm learning a lot about having an idea in Mendocino, because we're in month 26 right now, to completely revamp a building exactly as it was intended to be built in the 1800s. There's going to be, we've hired, I believe, the best architect we possibly could to maintain the historical significance of this building, which in 1972, Governor Reagan's review of the state parks is in the history books of recommending this building be torn down in 1972. And I'm glad it hasn't been torn down, because the fact that it's a carriage house is part of our history, and it's connected by property, not physically connected to the Ford House. I think that this is an opportunity for cooperative working between state parks and the county to get a building back where it was in the 1800s, over 100 years ago it was there, and to allow the sheriff's office a location in Mendocino to meet with victims of crimes and to talk to the public and so forth. You know, parking is a big deal, and we certainly understand that on busy days where we have tourist parking in Mendocino, we want tourists to park in Mendocino. And on both sides of the entrance to the driveway are disabled curbs, so we wouldn't park there. So there's the parking at nighttime, for the security of the car and for the safety of the deputy sheriff to be able to get to his car as quick as possible, is probably going to be as close to the carriage house as possible, and that could be in the parking lot, in the driveway, but there's no historical educational meetings occurring at nighttime. You know, at midnight there's usually not. And part of the reasons of putting a patrol car on the street during the day is the visibility of a patrol car. A visible patrol car reduces crime. We know that. And to keep our tourists satisfied that there is some type of law enforcement in the community where they're dropping a lot of money, we certainly want to give them the comfort of knowing that law enforcement is there. So what we intend to do is continue doing our job in Mendocino, not be seen any more than we already have been seen, but to have a more modern interior of a building where computers can be used. The current one has stairs where there's handicapped people who cannot meet our deputy sheriffs at certain locations and certain times. We're trying to get this ADA compliant, so it can be easier for our citizens to meet with our deputy sheriffs and to maintain the dignity of the carriage house, the Ford House. It's very important. So yeah, I'd gladly.
Could you add to the question about plumbing in the building?
Yeah, there's no water running intentionally going to be into the carriage house. Right now, there's lots of unintentionally water, and the building is almost falling down. If a person leaned on this building, I would imagine the architect would agree there's a chance the building's going to fall down.
Well, we're glad you're restoring it.
I do have one more question, if I might.
Yes.
I love the idea of reusing the building, but did you get special funding for this to rebuild it?
We did not.
Uh-huh.
No.
But it's small, so maybe it won't be too terribly much.
Very small, but and I'm going to guess that there's no sheriff's substation in the state of California that's going to have a better view
I think you're right.
than what this substation is going to have over the bay of Big River right there. It's going to be beautiful. And while this doesn't have to do with the permit application, it will, once a building is completed, it will be known as the Ricky Del Fiorentino Memorial Substation. For me, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I guess we'll come back to the commission and close the public hearing.
Well, it seems like a good idea to me. I think that having a place to do their work, type up reports, get on the computer, meet with people is great. The parking worries me a little, but not so much. I think it's kind of offset with the idea of a visible patrol car and
In a nicely restored building.
yeah.
Got a motion?
Well, it's actually Commissioner Hall's district, so I don't want to steal his thunder.
Given that it's.
Did you have a
50/50.
comment, Commissioner Kruger?
In regard to the resolution, the next to the last whereas, mentions that the hearing was February 2nd. I think we should update that.
Madam Chair, Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski. That was gonna be my only note on the resolution is it was prepared for a previously scheduled meeting, so we can adopt the resolution with the note that we'll update all dates for the meetings for present day.
Good. Other than that, I'm all for it.
I make the recommended resolution. Moved.
I'll second it.
And that's with all the dates updated and all
Yes,
that.
of course.
All those in favor of the motion, well, I guess you have to do a roll call on these.
Commissioner Warner,
Yes.
Commissioner Kruger,
Yes.
Commissioner Hall,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Chair Holtkamp.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The next item is matters from staff.
So I actually have lots of things. Mary Lynn Hunt. So last week, Director Dunnicliff, Nash Gonzalez, our consultant, and myself attended the State Planning Directors Conference in Sacramento. And one of the things that happened, I'm sure you're all pretty familiar with this through the years, but one of the things they do is all the counties get up and go around the room and talk about what the topics are of high priority in their departments. And as you may have guessed, cannabis was number one on most people's lists. And it was interesting to hear that, they're taking, every county is doing probably something different. I mean, some have enacted an outright ban, others have ordinances already adopted. So everyone's dealing with the same issues, no matter if you're in Southern California or Northern. The other thing that was another topic was visitor serving facilities and how everyone's dealing with that, from Airbnbs to long-term rentals. And so everyone's coming up with new ordinances addressing that. Agritourism in the Central Valley was a pretty big issue. And I know that Madera County, I talked to one of their planners at length, and they've just adopted some stuff. So she has sent that up to me. Haven't had a chance to look at it, though. The other thing is staffing positions. We've put out through Human Resources openings for planners 1, 2, and 3, and also senior planner. Part of this is ramping up for what we feel may inundate us when cannabis goes into effect. The regulations go into effect, so we're trying to get a head start, although I don't know if we'll be up and running completely, but hopefully we'll have more staff on board. That was another thing at the directors conference. Every county is experiencing staff turnover. And I kind of thought, oh, this is just unique to Mendocino County. It's not. It's happening everywhere. So there was good discussion on that also. As far as the current update on cannabis for our county, we have been working a lot. We are tentatively scheduled for the March 21st Board of Supervisors meeting. That'll be the first reading for the medical cultivation portion of the regulations. Manufacturing, processing facilities, which is non-cultivation, we're just beginning workshops on that, and so the Planning Commission may see that probably early summer, if not before. And Matt, you can chime in if I've got any of that wrong. The other thing that you will probably see before you, hopefully in April, is we're updating our FEMA regulations. Right now, we have an inland ordinance, we have a coastal ordinance. We were audited a couple of years ago, and actually Mr. Gonzalez has been working on updating it. So we're trying to merge the two together. We will just have one ordinance, and so in the future, when we have to update our ordinance, it's just one document and not two separate ordinances. And do you want to speak to that a little more?
And if I can go ahead and give you a preview. Right now, the floodplain ordinance is found in the zoning code. What we're looking at doing is taking it out of the zoning ordinance and putting it into Chapter 22, where all the other resource-based ordinances live. And so it'll be a standalone ordinance that will apply county-wide. There will be no separate coastal ordinance or a separate inland ordinance. And that was part of my research, was that there's only just a couple of counties left in the coastal areas that have separate ordinances, and we were one of them. Everybody has now gone to a single ordinance. This way, if you have to make changes and so on, it's not an ordeal through the Coastal Commission. And so that's what we're doing. So anticipating bringing this ordinance to you next month.
And with that, I have nothing further unless there's
I have
questions.
a question.
Yes.
In the FEMA ordinance, are there big differences between coast and inland?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily, because in the coastal area you have what they call the V zones, which are the coastal inundation zones, and the zones that deal with those areas along beachfronts. Otherwise, all the definitions, all of the standards, everything is the same. The ordinance is getting an update, so there'll be some new language in there as far as definitions. And I believe there's a change dealing with structures and accessory buildings to make the ordinance more consistent with what's out there in the state. Other than that, it's basically going to be, just like I said, a bringing the two together.
Okay. So will there be any changes to the flood zones? It'll be the same?
Not
Because-
under this ordinance. We have to have our ordinance adopted before July 1st. With that said, FEMA is then going to begin the process of updating the maps. So we're going to see changes to our floodplain maps, because I believe our maps were adopted back in 1983. And then there have been some slight changes, but now what's happening is they're going through every county and making significant changes to their maps. So ordinance has to be in place, then FEMA will come back to us with new maps and a new flood study.
Yeah, because they aren't accurate.
Mhm.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? I did have one. I noticed we are canceling our March 16th meeting, and I did want to ask for the record, is our primary meeting going to be the first Thursday now? It's been going that way for a few months now, and
Well, typically, it's the first and third. Because of our workload in the past, we were down to one meeting. I think you need to be prepared to meet either the first or the third, or potentially both. We have some projects that are starting to come forward as far as minor subdivisions. And so it's really hard to tell you which meeting's going to be canceled each month, not knowing what's ready for the agenda. I'm sorry, there's no way to know. And we want as many to get through as quickly as possible, so, yeah, March, the second one's canceled. I would imagine you'll see us back here the 1st of April sometime. One other thing I wanted to state was, now I've lost my train of thought. You asked about the meetings. Oh, one other project that's just come in, we have 2 major subdivisions that have been submitted. One is for a 10-parcel subdivision in Covelo, and the other is for a 122-parcel subdivision just north of Lover's Lane. And those, as far as I know, are posted on our website for the referrals have gone out. And Danielle, is that correct, that it's not posted yet? Okay, well, then maybe it hasn't been posted yet. Okay. Anyway, that's something that's going to be coming down the pike, but it's going to be later in the year. But I just wanted you to be aware that someone asked if there's some subdivisions being proposed. Yes, there are. So activity in the department, as far as planning goes, is picking up substantially.
And one assumes that come summer and the cannabis permits getting issued, there will be building issues.
Yeah. With the cannabis permits, I know that Humboldt County had over 2,000 applications. There was a survey that went out at a state level for every county, the numbers, and I think ours was around 1,000 permits. So, not that you're going to see all those, but you'll see, a few
But there
use
will
permits.
be some building activity with some of them.
Yes. Anyway,
Okay, anything else for staff? Any matters from the commission?
I had one that just occurred to me. I'm on the Mendocino Community Foundation Board, and we had listening sessions last month in Anderson Valley. We got washed out of Wallala, Point Arena, but Covelo, Willits, and just to hear what the community, thought, was interested in and what they needed and where we might be able to plug in and help. The one topic that came up in every one was housing, shortage of housing. So every community seems to see that as a major shortage problem.
So it's nice to hear some subdivisions are coming forward.
Madam Chair,
Yes?
I did have a question, if this is appropriate. I know we are not going to discuss it, it's not on the agenda, but the speaker that came forward today, will that project go to the commission?
It's not a project yet. Nothing's been submitted, and really nothing will be submitted until we have the manufacturing processing regulations in place. We're considering those type of industries when we look at those regulations. At a future date, you'll see the regulations. Whether you'll see that specific project, I can't answer that today.
Right.
I don't know.
All right, thanks.
If that concludes matters from the commission, we can move on to approval of our December 1st minutes. And I'm understanding county council has some comments on those.
Good morning, Deputy County Council Matt Kudrowski. I believe some changes were submitted by the commissioners separately. In reviewing the minutes, I wanted to revise one sentence on page 6. So I was going to read that into the record, and I've already provided the secretary with that language. On page 6 of 10 of the December 1st minutes, the fourth full paragraph on that page that begins with Mr. Kudrowski. The last sentence reads, he also noted that it was not necessary for the commission to make a recommendation on the ag ordinance as it was beyond their scope of influence and will be before the Board of Supervisors for final approval. I'd like to delete that sentence and would insert the one that I'll read here. He also noted that while agricultural ordinances might not normally come before the Planning Commission, the ordinance in this case is linked to the overall approval of the complete cultivation regulation. I reviewed the tape of the hearing and think that's a more accurate summary of my statement.
And Commissioner Ogle also submitted written comments through email that, to me, I don't know if I need to read those in, but they look mostly like grammatical changes, not substantive changes in any way.
Yes, and I think all those were good. There were a couple that she didn't capture. One on page 5, the first paragraph under approval of the October 6th Planning Commission minutes. The second line uses the word negations, and I think it was negotiations. And then Commissioner Ogle noted this one also, which is the last sentence in the paragraph just before the timed item. And that was my comments, and it's that last sentence that is kind of nonsensical, and I'm not sure how to improve it, except just maybe saying she noted there would be future hearings when more questions would be discussed.
Works for me.
Because we'd already mentioned the time thing, so don't need to.
Any other comments or corrections? And I think we just need a motion.
I would move to approve with those corrections.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I guess we're ready for adjournment.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Quickest
All
meeting in
opposed,
history.
duck. Yay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is a record.
Yeah. I hope the folks from the coast have other things to do.